Okay, here's a brief revisiting of the beginning of the second movement of the Prokofiev Sixth Sonata, the Allegretto. Okay, sometimes review means mindless, and I think in my best interest, it will be in my best interest to indicate the groupings. For me, it's the thought groupings that help to make, I can't say this in rhythm, my rhythm, excuse me, my review most effective, because I've determined places where, having had a clear thought and a clear set of instructions for myself, it makes it easier to play. So, for example, end of measure 4, then start this group, and then this twisty stuff. Left hand switches, 7, the repeated note, all kinds of little strategies I've worked out that I have to invoke for a successful experience. Now that's the end of the first statement. So I should be able to get there with a reasonable sense of simplicity. Almost. Okay, there was a wrong note there, but that was better because in reviewing, after a 7-day layoff from doing this, I want to be able to reconnect with some images I have of how it goes, how it feels, what makes it longer viewed, longer lined, easier, simpler. So when I just find a newness coming at me, I know that that's not in my best interest. So I'm looking for example, right at the beginning, there's an indication in the left hand, the first tritone I play 5-2, or 2-5. So that's a point of decision making. That's a branching. This first hand redivision, the third quarter of the third measure, that's another one. So because I need to place my hands in an appropriate fashion. And then there, this twist, this replacement. So that all feels good, even though it's in little increments. Shift my attention. Oops. Interesting. With the hand redivision, I'm just going back to E, which is something I'd never grown conscious of. So that's it. Another thing that's really, really useful for the ear and the body and the mind is choosing a voice, even sometimes arbitrarily, a voice that you normally don't trace in order to become more aware of how it feels, how it sounds, how it looks. I'll choose, for example, the tenor voice. Oops, it's a little tricky sometimes. In this case, it starts off as the bottom of the right hand, then the top of the left hand. And the awareness then makes this, when I'm voicing it normally, easier, because I can shift my awareness anywhere I want. Mistake in a passage like this is to make the non-legato turn vertical. So it's connection exists even when you're non-legato. I don't like my fingering because I didn't pay any attention to the fingering I wrote. Tritone fingering that I prefer, 2-5. Instead of going to 2-1-2 to get it ready for the 1-4. This is all in measure 4. So I've learned at times to not fight what my body decides is best. So maybe thoughtfulness with which I got the left hand ready is not nearly as important as ease. So I'm going to put in 2-5 as a possibility. Because as it is, I'm shifting my right hand at that point. So it makes perfect sense to feel the end of the first phrase with ease. Because I think it's great. Okay, I remember all of those things. I remember them not vaguely, not well, but that they're familiar but haven't been visited recently. So I have to refamiliarize myself with their idiosyncrasies. In particular, I'm not able to react visually to everything I see. I can see it, but I can't, it doesn't penetrate my consciousness enough. I just see markings. I see, oh, things that I remember, sort of. So B-flat, chords pivoting around B-flat and 15. And then B natural, and then the weird and harmonically spelled chords that are hard to read. So I've written in alternate versions. I marked 1 on downbeat of 18, downbeat of 19, but I need a reminder that I'm playing 2 1s in a row. going to write down fourth finger on the F sharp of F sharp, first inversion in 18. That's third chord, and fifth finger later on. So 4, 4, 4, 5. Changes here, going over the bar line of to 17. That's useful. Slowly, but I remember it obviously because that's over the page change, page turn. 4 fourths, 3 fours in a row. Works very nicely, especially when I'm conscious of doing that. Finishes. That's where I've been wanting to go. So. Should be automatic and easy. So I want to make sure that it is on auto mode. Oops. I know. Okay, I think practicing this by feel is much better right now because sometimes you have to make a decision whether the visual input is helpful or harmful. And sometimes it's quite frankly harmful when there's a lot of accidentals, when there's a lot of enharmonic spellings that don't exactly feel intuitive. Under those circumstances, if you have a simpler sensation under your hands, it's better to go with that. Choose the sense or senses that work best for you. It's just really, that's as simple a aphorism as I can think of. Don't be insistent that you always have to learn in the same way. Even if you consider yourself a visual learner or a tactile learner or whatever, or an oral learner, that's not always the case. A given passage will make a given set of demands on you. And your response, you have to respect what your actual response is, not what your assumed response is. Let that be an aphorism. It was interesting. I looked down at the keyboard. I didn't really need it, and in a way it felt scary because I was... Okay, I changed my left-hand fingering a bit, but because I was used to just doing it by feel. That's almost a little too fast. Yeah, I needed my fourth finger on F sharp in the left hand. This is very good. Okay. Let's go back, all the way back to the second stage. So I'm going to that's a very significant spot, to pick up to 17. That left hand. Okay, I just wanted a left hand awareness. Whoops. Substitutions are under-practiced or not practiced with enough fluency, and they end up being really ungainly and therefore untrustworthy. So, of course, organists do it all the time, so they would disagree. Once more. I'm getting the two versions of this mixed up. The first goes and is all eighths. The second is stops and turns to fourth. So. And the other thing is, there's no need for a finger substitution. So if I start doing something fancy, I'll be on the wrong finger. See, the first one has a finger substitution. The second doesn't. The third does. It moves up, so I don't think I'd articulated that particular distinction before, at least out loud. Simple one. Whoops. Then I didn't remind myself of that. Once more. It really starts to feel like an emotional, musical, physical event that I'm enjoying. So that's where I'm heading. Incidentally, what I just did there, that little false start, I'm always noting to my students and smiling about it that lots of false starts are sort of like stallings or as I've talked about before, speech stuffers like ums. They give you extra time to get it right. And it's important in the beginning of a piece, particularly, to know precisely what your first few adventures, shall we say, are going to be. So if there's a big shift after one measure, after one note, you have to know how you're going to accommodate that big shift. What are you going to think? How far does your thought go? If it only goes as far as play the first note and hope that your body remembers it, you're putting yourself in a not a very good position. So here, I'm ready for what comes. Then I'm ready for the shift, or just about ready. What I needed to be readier for was to get my thumb shifted over on the revised fingering. And what I didn't do is put a fingering in for my low G sharp. So 1, 3, 1. I'm always afraid of this because of the creeping B flat, B flat, B flat, B flat, B flat being natural. And I didn't have, I think, a good sense of how to enter into that passage. Then we're on to what we had done before, what I had done. Contrary motion. Having the right fingering entering into that made such a difference. I shouldn't be at all surprised. And then let's see. Okay, that little... I went 1, 2 to 5, and then 2, 3, 4 is very nice. I like the fingering. 5. Now I'm at the place where memory / understanding / assimilation or internalization, whatever I choose to call it, I'm at the point where I kind of know these things. I don't want to go on autopilot to the extent of saying, ooh, I trust in the sensation with which I get from place to place. Because I, in the past, have tended to rush that, to sort of try as quickly as possible to pull the notes off the page and stick them in my body and have them just stay there. And I really want the constant re-impression that I'm getting from things I've noticed on the page. I'm really interested in making sure that I can play for memory, but not as a test, but rather as a very nonchalant recognition that I know the piece well. So I will idly check myself out to make that sort of way. I feel the comfort, but I feel I'm not unduly stressing myself by testing whether or not I was able to make it happen. Because anytime I'm not sure, I'll just glance. I need to feel that the reinforcement comes whether from my memory or from the page or from my body or whatever. Let's see. Drift. And of course, if I'm playing it with a sense of ease, I'm really not reading it. I'm just noting what I already know on the page. It's an incidental reminder. I'm also noting, because my body's done it several times in a row, that in spite of trying to be smart about my fingering, my body is often smarter than my mind about knowing what's right. So in measure 12 on the downbeat, at D, F sharp, I've been putting in 1, 2, and going to 5 to make the leap more dependable. But my body kept bringing me to 2, 3 after the 7, so, and then move. Now whether or not I look good solution. Whoops. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yes. You know, I'm just at the point where, unlike the point I was at a few minutes ago, where the familiarity is starting to really make me feel I can explore this piece. To find all its myriad attractions. Okay, well, that's certainly the biggest chunk. The first time I've gotten through the page with that degree of fluency. Admittedly, I kept doubting myself in little places. I could feel the relative uncertainty, but I was so glad to get through it with that sense of ease and familiarity. I know this place, that single one, the one that didn't involve substitutions, that made me uncertain. Because that was a bit of new learning. And it's a question of picking my hand up off the F G sharp and re-delivering it with the fifth finger. So. Oh yes, so all I needed to do is to shift my attention. Good. Now, the interesting business of the fact that the composer writes espressivo, though, so he's suggesting to you a different emotional involvement. Sometimes, and I admit to being guilty of this, and not always for bad reasons, when learning notes or learning technical solutions to things, I divorce myself from a full investment in what the music is all about, just for the sake of the learning. That sometimes can be a good thing because you don't want to have to feel that you're concerned or completely involved when you're dispassionately just trying to learn details. On the other hand, if it creates a completely different physical approach or sonorous approach, for example, you have to make sure that you don't teach yourself one way that then has to be completely voided when you get to the point of being interpretively involved. So this really changes it. It's the first time where not only does he write espressivo, piano espressivo, but he writes long slurs indicating down. And these intervals, unlike the close-in intervals that are in the non-legato part, are reaching, expressive in their own right. He didn't have to write espressivo for a change to be obvious. Crescendo, let's see how far it goes, all the way up to forte. Okay, one more time. Or maybe not. You know how often we say that and then one more time after that. Okay, so not perfect, but really really felt nice. You know, I'm at the point where it's starting to feel like a piece of music. I'm starting to feel some of the inherent contrasts, like this wonderful spooky moment down in the bass here, and of course the espressivo. So this is what we work for. Not just this, to go beyond this, but to reach the point of real engagement, where the music starts to speak to you, and you start to be able to be animated by the energy and the insight of the composer, and to be able to explore color and gesture and connections in a way that stimulate even further. It's not that I don't love the puzzle solving. I really do adore it. I think, you know, I have a scientific mind as well as an artistic mind, I believe, and I like putting the pieces together and pulling things apart that don't seem to work, and then finding an optimal way of getting at the essence of it. But then reaching the point where the tools are in place and you can really start to find what's meaningful to you. That, of course, is a deliciousness beyond what I noted before, and it all goes together. And I think we are extraordinarily privileged, those of us who are able to spend our lives in music.